Hello, my friends, and welcome back to English Story Cove. Today, story about the Old Suitcase. Once upon a time, in a big and busy city, there was a very successful company. The company made clothes, shoes, and bags. It had hundreds of workers. The owner of this company was an old man named Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris was incredibly rich. He owned big buildings, beautiful houses, and expensive cars. But Mr. Harris was different from other rich people. He was always kind, very calm, and he wore very simple clothes. He did not like to show his wealth. He did not wear gold watches or expensive suits. Every single day, Mr. Harris came to his office at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. And every day, he carried the same thing in his hand. It was a very old, brown leather suitcase. The suitcase was scratched, ugly, and very old. It looked like it belonged to a poor person. It did not match the beautiful office of a rich businessman. Nobody in the company knew what was inside that old suitcase. Mr. Harris always kept it near his desk. When he worked, the suitcase sat on a chair next to him. When Mr. Harris went to important meetings, he did not leave the suitcase on the chair. He put it inside a private wooden closet in his office and locked it with a small silver key. He always kept the key in his pocket. The employees of the company talked about the suitcase every day during their lunch break. Everyone was very curious. "Maybe it is full of gold and diamonds," a young manager named Tom said one day. "No," a secretary named Sarah replied. "Maybe it has secret documents about all his money and properties." Another worker said, "Maybe it is a lucky charm. Maybe that suitcase brought him all his success." Everyone had a theory, but nobody had the courage to ask Mr. Harris about it. Mr. Harris was a kind man, but he was also very private. The suitcase remained the biggest mystery in the company. A few months later, a new manager came to work at the company. His name was Peter. Peter was young, smart, and very ambitious. He was also very greedy. He wanted money, power, and a high position. Peter looked at Mr. Harris and thought, "This old man is too old to run this company. I am smarter than him. I want to be the director." Soon Peter noticed the old brown suitcase. He heard the stories from the other workers. He became obsessed with it. Peter thought to himself, "The secret to Mr. Harris's wealth must be inside that suitcase. If I can find out what is inside, I can use it to become rich and powerful like him. Maybe I can find a secret formula or an important document." Peter started to watch Mr. Harris very closely. He watched when the old man arrived, when he left, and where he kept the silver key. Peter wanted to open that suitcase at any cost. One day, a very important businessman from another country came to visit the company. Mr. Harris had to take the guest to a luxury restaurant for a long lunch meeting. Mr. Harris stood up from his desk. He was in a hurry. He put the old suitcase into the wooden closet, but he was thinking about the meeting. For the first time in 30 years, Mr. Harris made a mistake. He forgot to lock the closet. He left the silver key sitting on his desk. Then he closed his office door and left the building. Peter was watching from the hallway. He saw Mr. Harris leave. He walked past the office window and looked inside. He saw the silver key on the desk. Peter's heart began to beat very fast. This was his chance. The hallway was empty. Everyone else was busy working or having lunch. Peter opened the door quietly and walked into Mr. Harris's office. He picked up the silver key. His hands were shaking with excitement. He walked over to the wooden closet and opened the door. The old brown suitcase was sitting there, dark and mysterious. Peter pulled the suitcase out of the closet and placed it on Mr. Harris's large mahogany desk. He looked at the old locks. They were simple. He used a small tool from his pocket, and with a loud click, the suitcase opened. Peter closed his eyes for a second. He expected to see bags of money, glittering gold, or secret business contracts. He opened his eyes and looked inside. He was shocked. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. There was no gold. There were no diamonds. There were no secret documents. Inside the suitcase, there were only three things. First, an old, torn leather shoe. It had a big hole in the bottom. Second, a piece of hard, dry black bread. Third, an old, faded black and white photograph of a very small, poor farm. Peter was confused. "What is this?" he whispered to himself. "Why does a millionaire lock a broken shoe and old bread in a closet?" "Are you looking for something, Peter?" a calm voice asked. Peter jumped in fear. He turned around quickly. Mr. Harris was standing at the door. He had returned early because he forgot his notebook. Peter's face went completely white. He was caught. He was stealing from the owner of the company. He dropped his head and started to cry. "I am so sorry, Mr. Harris," Peter said, trembling. "Please don't call the police. I was curious about the suitcase. I thought there was a secret to your wealth inside." Mr. Harris did not look angry. He looked sad, but calm. He walked into the office, closed the door and sat down in his chair. He looked at the open suitcase, and then he looked at Peter. "Sit down, Peter," Mr. Harris said softly. Peter sat down, terrified. "You are right," Mr. Harris said. "The secret to my wealth is inside this suitcase." Peter looked up, confused. "But sir, there is only a broken shoe, dry bread, and an old photo." Mr. Harris smiled gently and picked up the faded photograph. 40 years ago, I lived on this small farm. My family was very poor. We had no money for food. One day my father died, and we lost the farm. I had to leave my village." He then touched the old leather shoe. "I walked to this big city on foot. I had no money for a bus. By the time I arrived, my shoe had a big hole, and my feet were bleeding. This was the only shoe I had." Finally, Mr. Harris picked up the dry piece of bread. "A kind woman in the city saw me crying. She gave me a piece of bread. It was hard and dry, but it saved my life because I hadn't eaten for 3 days. I saved a piece of it to remember that day." Mr. Harris looked into Peter's eyes. "I kept these 3 things in this suitcase for 40 years. Every morning, when I come to this beautiful office, I open this suitcase. I look at the shoe, the bread, and the photo. They remind me of who I am. They remind me that I was once poor, hungry, and alone." The old man closed the suitcase slowly. "This suitcase teaches me to be humble. It teaches me to treat my workers with kindness, because I know what it feels like to have nothing. True wealth, Peter, is not about how much money you have in the bank. True wealth is remembering where you started, keeping your heart clean, and staying humble. If you forget your past, you can never build a good future." Peter felt a deep shame in his heart. He looked at his expensive watch and his clean clothes. He realized that he had been very foolish. "Do you want to fire me, sir?" Peter asked quietly. Mr. Harris shook his head. "No, Peter. You are a smart young man, but your heart was in the wrong place. I will not fire you. I want you to stay and work. But from today, I want you to work with honesty, not greed. From that day on, Peter changed completely. He became the most honest and hard-working manager in the company. He no longer cared about the secrets of the suitcase, because he already knew the greatest secret of all, the power of humility. Before we finish, let's review today's key vocabulary. True wealth is not about money. It is about remembering where you started. What do you think? Write your answer in the comments below. Subscribe for more English stories every week. See you next time.